So in this video, we're going to be looking at two of the most beloved characters in all of film history, Master Yoda and Gandalf. We'll be competing them against one another in 5 key categories in order to explore who the greater character is. As two old, wise and powerful beings, Gandalf and Yoda both act as leadership and mentor figures in two of the most popular franchises in the history of fiction, and so naturally are very comparable characters. Despite this, they are also very different, primarily because they come from very different universes, so this should be a really interesting investigation. It should also go without saying, but this is simply my subjective opinion. Please don't roast me too hard down in the comments, but absolutely feel free to share your own ideas down below. Without further ado, let's get into it. As perhaps the two most iconic old and wise figures around, the wisdom of these two characters is scarcely matched by any fictional character in story history. Let's start with our little green friend. As a Jedi Master for nearly a millennia, and a Grand Master for a good deal of this time, Yoda was a mentor and role model to many Jedi. According to Star Wars, absolutely everything you need to know, the number of Jedi that Yoda trained, taught or influenced significantly is around 20,000, including younglings, Padawans, Jedi Knights and even already established Jedi Masters. Many of these individuals Yoda trained personally, such as Ki-Adi-Mundi, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker, an impressive haul of some truly great Jedi Masters. In addition to this, Yoda is well known for his wise advice and guidance that often come in the form of memorable one-liners, such as "do or do not, there is no try. The greatest teacher failure is. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering," and so on. There are just so many examples, and it pains me to limit my examples to just 3. The point I'm trying to make though is that Yoda's insights are so important to his image as a character of wisdom. This is because not only are they effective devices in which to teach the legions of the Jedi, but many of them are genuine real-life applications for all of us, and suggest ways to deal with failure, temptation and pain that we could all benefit from. However, even Yoda himself isn't immune to failure, as we must explore his shortcomings in his role as Grand Master and mentor. As Luke points out in episode 8, at the height of their power, the Jedi allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire and wipe them out. And that's a pretty good point. While Yoda did lead the Jedi for a long period of peace, he was at the helm as he failed to block Palpatine's plot to destroy the Jedi and take over the galaxy, leading to the tyranny and oppression of the Empire. Despite sensing a rising influence in the Sith and the dark side, and despite their distrust in the Chancellor, Yoda and the Jedi were, in the end, quite easily outmaneuvered and outsmarted at almost every turn. Although Yoda's track record with his Padawans was generally quite strong, he also trained Count Dooku, who went on to abandon the Jedi and become Darth Tyrannus, one of the key figures in the destruction of the Jedi Order. Let's also not forget that although Anakin Skywalker was predominantly trained by Obi-Wan, Yoda also had a significant part to play in his training, and therefore his ultimate transformation into Darth Vader. Gandalf is a being of many names: Olorin, the Grey Pilgrim, the White Rider, and Gandalf the Wise. The latter he did not receive merely by accident. Tolkien himself outlined that the wizard had no equal in terms of his intelligence in the entire franchise, but let us explore what that really means. Gandalf was unarguably noted as the wisest of his kind. The Maya, a group of primordial spirits whose purpose it was to create, maintain and protect the world. While the specific nature and abilities of the Maya are not altogether clear, they are considered to be at least partially divine creatures, to which their closest comparison are angels. If we assume that these creatures have an intellect anywhere close to the omniscience that we might associate with divine figures, then the knowledge and wisdom of the Maya is absolutely immense. Certainly, it is without doubt that at the very least Gandalf's knowledge of history, culture, traditions, languages, geography, philosophy, theology, and many more are extremely impressive. Similarly to Yoda, he also has an astonishing catalogue of quotes which prove his spectacular intellect. These include, "Despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. He that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. A treacherous weapon is ever a danger to the hand." And again, I could name many more. And yet, even Gandalf the Wise has his moments that are, shall we put it, slightly less wise. I mean, there's one major plot point in The Lord of the Rings that's been talked about probably more than the whole of Game of Thrones. Of course, it's the Eagles plot hole. And if you don't consider it a plot hole, then it kinda makes Gandalf look stupid. If you're not familiar, it is often questioned why the Eagles that saved Frodo and Sam from Mordor in Return of the King could not just have taken them there the entire way. Instead, the hobbits take a treacherous and long journey on foot. I will be looking at some potential explanations of this plot hole over on Sauron's fortress, so make sure to subscribe to that if you haven't already. Anyway, given Gandalf's role as a strategist and holder of wisdom for the Fellowship of the Ring, questions must be asked of Gandalf here. Overall, however, I'm going to give this round to Gandalf. Not only is his knowledge of the universe potentially divine in its magnitude, but, as mentioned, his most significant error of judgment was essentially a plot hole, and not something that Tolkien intended to include in Gandalf's character. And anyway, it sort of worked out in the end. The same cannot be said for Yoda, as his failure to stop the rise of the Sith was a genuine result of his lack of awareness and foresight, and led to catastrophic consequences. I will say that Yoda's one-liners of wisdom are much more memorable than Gandalf's, and by no means am I trying to discredit the incredible mind of the Grand Master, but I just feel like Gandalf just edges this category considering all factors. So 1-0 to Gandalf. The impact that a character has on its surrounding culture, and indeed the longevity of this impact, is a crucial aspect in the way we must compare the relative success of any given character. I feel like a broken record here, but of course, both these characters have had an enormous impression on the legions of both hardcore fans of each franchise. With regard to Gandalf, much of his cultural impact can be traced back to some of his most iconic moments in the Lord of the Rings films. His return from the dead in those new fresh as hell white robes, and Fly You Fools, to name but a few. I also feel his portrayal by the great Sir Ian McKellen in the films has done so much for the character. Not only was his performance so beloved by all the masses of fans, but also received critical acclaim. He was nominated for a BAFTA in 2 of the films, and even an Oscar, which is not particularly common for a fantasy film. Gandalf has been a staggeringly popular character since 1937 when The Hobbit was first published. Now, that's some longevity. The Empire website names him at 30 in the rankings of the top 100 greatest movie characters. Pretty impressive. Yoda himself, as one of the most recognizable characters of all time, is extremely popular. Perhaps the most frequent reference to him comes from his voice and pattern of speech. Part of his charm stems from how little we actually know about the little alien. That's why, in 2019 when we met Grogu, he instantly became the most talked about TV character of the year. In the Empire ranking of film characters, Yoda finished 38th. Not bad, but still 8 places below Gandalf. Despite this, I'm still going to give Yoda the point here, simply due to his consistently gargantuan popularity. Gandalf may have been around for longer, but the iconography of Yoda is almost unmatched by any movie character ever in my opinion. Next up, we have combat ability. Whether it be sword and a staff or even a lightsaber, the weapon wielding of both these characters mean you really wouldn't want to come up against either in a 1v1. While both of these magical old beings are both essentially interested in peace, they are still sometimes willing to fight for it, and therefore their skill in combat is an important category. It should go without saying, but Yoda is absolutely deadly, and this isn't surprising considering the centuries of practice he's had. Whatever you do, don't judge him by his size. Yoda is unbelievably quick and agile, and his accuracy and reflexes with a lightsaber mean that he was even able to almost defeat Darth Sidious. Surviving Order 66 is also no easy feat, and yet along with Obi-Wan, he managed to do just that. It's a shame we don't have much material on how ridiculously powerful Yoda must have been in his prime. However, from what material we do have, Yoda's combat skills are essentially as good as it gets. Now, you may well be thinking that surely Gandalf's combat ability cannot even compete with Yoda's. Despite wielding hand-to-hand combat weapons that simply don't compete with a lightsaber, Gandalf is an absolute machine with his sword and staff. He defeats scores of orcs with ease, and his fight with the Balrog is just as epic and just as impressive as Yoda's duel with Palpatine. Similar to Yoda, Gandalf is an old man, but still manages to tear it up on the battlefield. Who knows what sort of monster Gandalf could have been if he'd chosen to take the form of a more physically capable body. Ultimately, however, this round has got to go to Yoda, partly because his combat skills are up there with some of the strongest in all of film, but mostly because both of these characters came up against Christopher Lee, and Yoda seemed to do just a little bit better. So 2-1 to Yoda. This brings us to power, plain and simple. Who is the most powerful out of these two mighty characters? Let's get stuck in. Yoda's level of power, due to his strong connection to the Force, was formidable. Centuries of dedication to the light side and an absolutely unwavering trust and faith in the Force, combined with a very high midichlorian count, makes him an absolute beast. As mentioned, we only really see him past his best, but we do know that many consider him to be the strongest Jedi of all time. His abilities include an utter mastery of telekinesis, the absorption and utilization of the Force, and sometimes even telepathic communication. He was also able to maintain consciousness after his death as a Force ghost, and even interact with the world, such as when he summoned a lightning strike in Episode 8. A true force to be reckoned with, Yoda is obviously extremely powerful. Gandalf's power comes in a drastically different form to the Force. He is essentially a semi-divine creature, granted the use of many powers and abilities that mortals could only dream of. Firstly, he describes himself as a servant of the Seeker of Fire and wielder of flames, as he wields the Ring of Fire. Therefore, his speciality within magic are spells associated with light and fire. He can wield fire with devastating consequences, setting fire to forests and using it to terrorize and defeat groups of enemies simultaneously. He used his white fire, a beam of raw light, to distract the famously daunting Ringwraiths. His ability was so powerful that once Gandalf was reborn as Gandalf the White, only few beings in the entirety of Middle-earth would dare face him. Among many others, Gandalf's magic also allowed him to heal others, manipulate smoke, create deceptive illusions, and his voice could be amplified and used to force others into obeying his will. As an immortal spirit, Gandalf could not die. If his physical form is destroyed, he may come back to the mortal realm as another, which trumps Yoda's ability to exist as a Force ghost if you ask me. Due to the diversity and increased application of Gandalf's powers, he is in my opinion the more powerful being. While both are clearly a great asset during a combat situation, the sheer amount of spells that Gandalf could operate means that I believe he held more power over his surroundings. Gandalf just ultimately holds a more effective source of power in most scenarios. So the score is 2-all. When I was writing this video and coming up with categories of comparisons between these two absolute forces of nature, I found myself struggling what to call this final category. It is, in some ways, a combination of all the previous categories, a calculation of their sheer level badassery, how elegant, how heroic, and how unstoppable they are. This culminated in the final and most important category, of which I cannot name other than who is the coldest of these two characters. Let's look at Gandalf first. How many epic hero shots did Peter Jackson fit in for Gandalf over the Lord of the Rings series? I can answer that for you, quite a few. Being the most important character in the war against Sauron and the Orcs and basically destroying all manner of malevolent and unstoppable creatures, all the while maintaining his signature suaveness and decorum. Absolutely fabulous. Gandalf, without a shadow of a doubt, is a very, very cool character, and is vital to the success of the film franchise due to the personification of the epic and heroic characteristics that make the film so brilliant. But now we come to Yoda. Now, where do I start? Casually slamming two of the Emperor's guards into the wall with just a wave of the hand. The way he decapitates those two clones on Kashyyyk during Order 66. Catching Dooku's Force lightning before smiling and saying, "Much to learn, you still have." Yoda is pretty cool, and there are countless more examples that I'm sure you are thinking in your head right now. I don't think a word exists to denote the lack of temperature in this little alien's body. Both Yoda and Gandalf are characters that many people admire greatly, and are both extremely cool characters in their own right. I think that your opinion on this category, and indeed the video as a whole, comes down to which franchise you prefer. and this is certainly true for me. So I'm going to give the round, and also this video, to Yoda. Even putting my bias aside, I just don't think it gets any better than Yoda. He's universally known and loved. He's a powerful yet intrinsically good character, and he's awesome every time he appears on screen. But maybe most importantly, there's just nothing really like him in any other franchise. But please remember, this is just my opinion, and I really do love and appreciate Gandalf as well. So do you think I'm wrong? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and let me know if you want me to do any more cross-universe battles such as this one. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, may the Force be with you.